It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. From Fantha Tracks TV, this is Good Morning Tatooine!
Good morning, Tatooine indeed. Back once again after a very long break. Unplanned, but here we are, we're back, and we're going to have a special episode of the show because starting from March this month, every month we're going to have a roundtable chat at the end of every month. So we'll start off the new generation of Good Morning Tatooine with just a roundtable. I'm calling it Jabba's Court. So joining me in my palace of iniquity is a whole bunch of Gamorreans. It's the only way to describe them. And I'm going to first get you, if you're watching live, to subscribe, ring the bell on YouTube, Facebook, like us, follow us, share the content, give us our comments. We'll include as many comments as we can during the show, and we'll try and answer any questions you guys throw out there. First comment in there straight away from Blue Harvest Toys. Hello there, which is perfect because we're going to be talking Obi-Wan. So who's joining me today? First up, Mr. Mark Newbold. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you, mate?
I'm excellent. Thank you very much. Second guest, Paul Naylor.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. And third but not last, also from Making Tracks, Mr. Mulcaster. I remember Pob. Who remembers Pob? I can't remember the name of the chef.
There was a chef?
There was a chef. He presented it, did he not? What was his name? Nobody knows.
I don't know.
Right, we're throwing that out to the live crowd. If you remember Pob on Channel 4 at lunchtimes, what was the chef's name? Guys, we're going to be talking 3 Star Wars topics tonight. We're talking the Book of Boba Fett. The series is out. We've all watched it. We'll also be talking Galactic Starcruiser. None of us have ventured away there yet, but we've all seen the press sort of previews have been out there, and actual guests have started attending as well. So we'll give our thoughts from a distance on that, and we'll also look ahead to Obi-Wan. But let's start straight away with the Book of Boba Fett. Came out at the tail end of last year and throughout January, February. Mr. Newbold, what was your thoughts on the overall series?
As an overarching opinion on the series, I enjoyed it. Week on week, it was fun. It did feel very. I think me and Mark talked about it Making Tracks on reaction chats. It did sort of skirt left, skirt right, like somebody trying to dodge a sniper. So it didn't feel like there was a through line on it like there was on Mando, which felt like it had a place to go. Book of Boba Fett never quite felt like it had a place to go. But I think our sort of overarching thoughts in it was. There's a lot of Star Wars storytelling going on. There's Ahsoka coming. There's hopefully Rangers of the New Republic in some form or fashion coming. There's more Mando. So I think things like Book of Boba Fett, at the moment, it's a one-off standalone thing. But maybe in time, hello, Ruth, maybe in time it will become something more than just that one standalone thing. And it just, those elements sit into the broader Star Wars storytelling, and maybe things get picked up going forward in Mando, things get picked up going forward in Ahsoka, and so on and so forth. But I did enjoy it. I thought visually it was great. There was some fantastic stuff in it. The performances were good. It's probably not going to go down as my favourite ever season of Star Wars storytelling. But hey, we got it, and we got that amazing 6th episode, which I think a lot of people are going to hold quite dearly for a long time.
Yep. Blue Harvest Toys calling it Mando 2.5. Paul, would you agree with that?
Definitely. It's it must be quite upsetting, might not be the right word, but if Tim read all the reviews about episodes 5 and 6 being the favourite episodes of the Book of Boba Fett, which I think he was in for about 10 seconds in those 2 episodes.
Being generous, maybe.
Yeah. Then really that sort of like was how a lot of the reviews came across. I thought the whole was it 7 episodes? 7 episodes, wasn't it?
Yeah.
7.
Yeah. The whole 7 episodes were really good. I liked the way we were going backwards in time to see how he escaped the Sarlacc and how he developed that relationship with his adoptive tribe of Tusken Raiders. I thought that was quite cool how they did that. And how, as the series progressed, those two timelines were coming closer and closer together until the past was no longer relevant. He was, in theory, healed in in his bacta tank, and that was what brought it up to date. I liked all that. I kind of understood some of the complaints from some of the Boba Fett fans that were saying he was too talky, too chatty when he was on air, too much time out of the helmet. But, you know, as the character's developed, he's gone through a lot since we last saw him in Return of the Jedi. And I can kind of get on board with the development of his character and how much... get rid of me, mother. And
exactly the kind of thing that Boba Fett should be saying.
Yeah.
He would clearly get rid of his own mother. But thanks, I'll call you back, Mum. No, I like the fact that he wasn't quite as people would expect him to be. However, by the end of episode 7, there were strong hints that if the series does get picked up again, or if we see Boba Fett in another series, possibly Mando Series 3, that he is likely to be more like how we expect him to be. Because he said, this isn't really the job for me. And him and Fennec were on about blasting off somewhere and going having some adventures. So that's possibly where it's going to lead to. So for me, I thought it was a decent season. But I still do prefer The Mandalorian.
Tarkin's top shelf saying there, Mr. Mulcaster, that the flashbacks were a great storytelling device to move a story forward and efficiently. How did you feel about the flashbacks? A lot of people loved them, but also felt a bit disappointed by the payoffs.
I can understand that. Yeah, to be fair, I mean, I think in some respects, if we hadn't have had those flashbacks, I think a lot of those burning questions about, like, you know, how did he get out of the Sarlacc pit and all that kind of stuff would kind of still be left unanswered, and I don't think we would have been satisfied with the way they would have done it otherwise. Flashbacks are a convenient way of getting a lot of exposition into a story like that. So I think it's good, and I appreciated the fact that they kind of got to a point, as Paul was saying, and then they dropped him off. I mean, I think overall for me, I really liked the series, but I don't think it was quite as accomplished as I think it could have been. They tried to do a lot with it, but I don't think they really kind of followed through on a lot of the points, and they kind of like hinted at stuff. They wanted to go for this big Western homage, but yet I don't think there was enough development of the ancillary characters to really make me care much about Mos Espa, if I'm honest. You know, I kind of sometimes felt that Boba was kind of saying, you know, these people are counting on me, but we didn't really see that. We didn't really see them kind of like, you know, being really turned out and begging for his help. And that it was just something that he was saying. So, you know, it kind of had hits and misses. But at the end of the day, when you've got Boba Fett riding a freaking Rancor, it's gonna look amazing, you know. And having him kind of like just completely lay waste to Mos Espa, you can't go wrong with that. So, you know, ups and downs as far as I'm concerned.
I think that's kind of how, you know, I felt a little bit. Was there was elements, you know, like the escape from the Sarlacc pit that we all kind of wanted to see, but kind of felt a little bit weak because the Sarlacc almost seemed inactive completely in that whole scene. There was elements like going to Toshi Station, but it could have been any random building in anywhere on Tatooine because there was nothing to do with the fact it's Toshi Station and the characters there.
But I mean, with that in mind, you've got to remember, I suppose, like, you know, it's very easy to walk that fan service line, isn't it? And, you know, even for some people, just seeing Toshi Station and seeing potentially, you know, Cammy and Fixer was too much fan service. And so you kind of think they doubled down on it. I think, you know, you'd get complaints that way as well, in some respects.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. And there was just elements like that, and I thought you're maybe trying to touch on things, but you're not really delivering in any great depth on them. I thought the same with Tusken Raiders. Was really enjoying that story, but it just seemed to come to kind of an anticlimax kind of end with no real sort of consequence. When the Tuskens all got wiped out, there was like what's the reaction to this? What's he wiped out a bunch of speeders guys who turned out were the faked that it was them that attacked the Tuscans. And it just didn't feel any kind of end conclusion to that story of what was the point in the end. It was just like, here's this little side story and it's just went nowhere. I don't know how you felt about that, Mr. Newbold.
Yeah, again, we did speak about this on Making Tracks about there's an old sort of Lucasfilm style of storytelling where they don't tie off all the knots, so you can come back and do a book or a comic or whatever. Lucas left all that gap between episodes 2 and 3 and drops in a 7 seasons of an animated show, so they don't conclude or wrap up any storylines, they leave it open. And this felt like that there was plenty of fertile ground they could go back to if they wanted to. But we know that we're talking about it later. We've got Obi-Wan coming, Mando season 3, Bad Batch season 2, Andor season 1, Rogue Squadron. So many things coming. That's not to even mention books, comics, and video games. That likelihood is we'll never get to go back to that time period and tell those stories. So it did need some more conclusion on certain elements of it, I think.
Matt's asking there for not enough dead droids. That's always a fair comment. Not enough droids. You had a droid in there, and that's what upset me more than anything. A droid who was introduced to us in Return of the Jedi, torturing another one, and now he was helping and being helpful and basically being the job of a protocol droid. Upset me greatly.
Becca makes a great point down there, though. Sorry to jump in. Becca makes a great point about like Din and Luke and Ahsoka and those stories. It's a bit like when you read Aftermath and you had the interludes in between, the different chapters, and and then you're coming back to your main storyline. So in that sense, quite right, it did feel more like a book than a series. That's a great observation.
I'm looking forward to the episode of Boba Fett taking his helmet along to a colorist to have his helmet redone. So I don't know if Mark Mulcaster could help with that at all. I don't know.
I mean, to be fair, one of my kind of like costuming complaints about the whole series was actually it all felt a little bit too clean, a little bit too clinical, and like it just didn't feel dusty enough, even for Tatooine. It just everybody just didn't feel kind of like they'd just been in a sandstorm and stuff like that, which is just one of those kind of things that kind of frustrated. I just wanted to go in there and weather the hell out of like his armor and stuff like that. But you never know what happens in season 2. But I think it's a fair point what Becca's saying, to be honest. I mean, it is, they called them chapters rather than episodes, and we kind of had those interludes, a bit like we had interludes in the Empire trilogy by Chuck Wendig and that, and they worked really well because that's how we got Cobb Vanth. So I quite like how they've done that in some respects. I think one of the things that, and I hate repeating what I've said on Making Tracks, but one of the things I really like doing is actually kind of accepting that this is all Star Wars, and so at the end of the day, we're going to see all these characters hopefully kind of like cross over and pop into one episode of Mando and then go into Ahsoka, and I think what we're going to end up filling out is a nice kind of like vibrant period of time in the galaxy where there's going to be lots of different adventures which actually will kind of be interlinked but also not necessarily directly connected, so it will still feel like a bigger galaxy. That's my hope anyway.
So Paul, as Mark's saying there was characters kind of crossed over from other mediums and from the comics. Chrysanthemum came across. We also saw new characters introduced in the Mod Bikers, or Power Rangers as people like to call them. Your thoughts on, so that was kind of maybe the core bunch of new characters kind of introduced that probably established themselves to some degree. Cad Bane as well came over from the cartoons. What are your thoughts on the characters that were brought into the series and their effect?
Right, I really like the fact that we got to see more of Pelimotto. Quite a bit of a divisive character. A lot of people, you either love or hate her, but it was good to see a bit more of her again. I've got a feeling that she might crop up in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series in a younger form. That might be quite cool to sort of bridge that gap. The fact that she's dated Jawas, let's not even go there. That was something that we didn't need to know about. Very furry, apparently. Very furry. But yeah, I mean, for me, it wasn't so much seeing people back in it like Ahsoka, but when we got to what Mark Newbold alluded to, episode 6, where we got to see not Luke briefly in an episode. I mean, that episode centered around Luke for a large part of it, and the achievement that they made there, it wasn't perfect. There was the odd part of it wasn't spot on, but some of the bits where we first see him and he's meditating, and then when he was up in the trees with Grogu and he's in the backpack, it was just amazing. What they can do now. I mean, if that's the jump that they've done from season 2 of Mando to that, then give it another couple of years and we'll be able to bring back, resurrect all the characters that we want.
Cara Dune.
Absolutely. But other new characters, I love the fact that we got Matt Berry voicing 88. So we've now got 2/3 of the It Crowd core cast associated with Star Wars. So we've got some Irish fella going to turn up, I think, in Obi-Wan Kenobi. But he's got to play a droid, hasn't he? Because they all play droids. But yeah, for me, I loved the fact that we got the 2 Gamorrean guards. That the character development for them was interesting, and the fact that we actually felt more upset about seeing them die than we did perhaps Kylo Ren tells you everything you need to know.
Mr. Mulcaster, your thoughts on some of the characters that were introduced in the series? Did they get enough on-screen time? You know, my kind of thought was the character Drax actually got more story development in the last episode of the series, rather than in the episode that was kind of focused around the mod bikers. I don't know your thoughts.
Yeah, no, that's actually a fair point. I mean, in some respects, they were kind of doing that like Magnificent Seven kind of vibe, really. You know, kind of across the book, they kind of bring in all these characters basically to really fill out bodies for when the the big standoff happens at the end of the book.
Because I was going to say that like in the end of the final episode, the kind of sort of end scene for Boba was effectively his team kind of gathered together, but I wasn't entirely sure if that really connected with the audience like it was maybe intended to.
Yeah, that's I think that is a good example of how they've tried, but you can see the intent, but I think the execution isn't quite there. It's quite an overt kind of brushstroke rather than it being quite precise. And so I think that is probably part of the problem. I mean, for instance, Jennifer Beals' character, you kind of got the vibe, at least from the the promotional material and the fact they made quite a big deal about her actually being it, that she was going to be probably more of a central character. And really, really most characters didn't really get much screen time, really, to be fair, I don't think. The mods, however, they grew on me by that last episode. I mean, I objected to their kind of like the design of at least the speeder bikes and stuff, quite, because I thought, again, that was a little bit too of an overt on the nose kind of nod. And I think they, maybe with a bit of extra time and refinement, they could have kind of made something a little bit more kind of clever. But I quite like the notion of, these people who basically look like they should be on like the 10th level of Coruscant actually being on Tatooine. And so I quite like that juxtaposition, because it's like, again, like mod culture is all about kind of like, high couture Italian, clothing and stuff like that. So you kind of see that vibe, but it's whether or not I think, you had to kind of really dig a little bit deeper to kind of get that. I mean, the stuff with Drash and the that other rifle lady from Freetown, I thought that was a nice kind of bit of kind of character development. But again, it kind of came a little bit too late, and it was a nice arc. But really, on that final episode, you kind of you don't really need conflict like that, because you've got the Pikes. They are the biggest conflict in that episode. So you don't necessarily need that little bit of jostling around. But then again, it goes to show just how actually not everybody on Tatooine sees everybody as equals and stuff like that. So it creates interesting kind of dynamics just on that planet. So that's hopefully something we might see explored a little bit differently or a bit deeper in Kenobi. Maybe, who knows? But I didn't really have a problem with that. So, I'm just happy to see Black Chrysanthemum when he came in, because I think he really kind of definitely he was he was the equalizer, and I think he really had a presence that I don't think we've ever seen from a Wookiee before.
Yeah. Mark, you mentioned earlier episodes 5 and 6. Probably the highlights of most people to the series was that 2 episodes. A lot of criticism, though, with the way that it was kind of executed, and that it took you completely away from the Boba story. So I always had this kind of idea that they should have done the 4 episodes, had a pause, did a movie, on Disney Plus, 2 episodes back to back of Mando to get past that story, then return for the big finale. I don't know what your thoughts were. Did it work for you as part of the Boba series? Should it been handled differently?
I think when in season 2, when Fett and Fennec came into it near the end, that felt very organic because of what Mando was doing, and you were still following Mando on his journey, and Fett and Fennec came into that storyline, so it felt like an organic thing. With this one, it did feel like it was a completely, like that, off somewhere else. So as well done as it was, I think you've got a point. I mean, me and Mark were talking earlier about, with Star Wars in general, I think we're so conditioned to think of Star Wars in trilogies or just entertainment in blocks of episodes or whatever it may be. We're in a streaming world now, so there's no need. They could do exactly what you said. They could go, well, this is season 1 of Book of Boba Fett, but here's the first 4 episodes, and then leave it a month and then do a TV movie of those 2 episodes like you just said, and then come back for the finale. Why not? It doesn't matter. You can go off and do different things if you want to do that. But that being said, they did it how they did it. It was fascinating television. And again, I'll say something Mark said, on the show when we were talking about it. It's Star Wars. It wasn't the Book of Boba Fett. It wasn't the Mandalorian. It wasn't anything. It was just Star Wars. I'm using my hands a lot today, sorry. And it was just very entertaining to watch. Yeah, very entertaining to watch. The fact that we're getting Star Wars television, whatever series it belongs to, isn't really the point, But I think it did pull you out of Fett's story, and you did see Boba about as much in those 2 episodes as you did in the original trilogy. So I guess it kind of makes sense.
I wonder.
I was just going to say, I think what it might have been about is that because we'd seen the healing of Boba Fett up to the end of episode 4. And then 5 and 6, by then, he'd inherited this new Rancor. And so we had to have that break while he was learning how to ride the Rancor, ready for the big finale. Although, personally, I think he should have gone back and got Slave 1. That would have been a lot more efficient. But we've got the build-up to him jumping around all over the place on King Kong and finishing off the job. So it was almost like I think it fell short of what they wanted to achieve. I think they wanted us to be hungry for Boba Fett to come back when we were more than satisfied that we got Mando back. So it kind of didn't do what they wanted it to do. It was like, oh, great, we're back to Mando. And then Fett came back the following week. It was like, okay, this will be okay. But nobody was like, oh, thank goodness he's back. It didn't quite get the payoff that they wanted.
The other payoff that seemed to puzzle me was the whole Pike situation, and there seemed to be this continual hint that there was a bigger bad. And, as it ended up that the Pikes had a tiny little office on Mos Espa and had the same little office for years. And the rest of the group of them turned up in the number 14 bus, because they didn't have their own spaceships to get them there, and they were supposed to be the big evil. And how they managed to get those giant droid shooting weapons on the Galactic Starcruisers as they came in puzzles me still to this day. But they didn't deliver as a enemy to Boba, I didn't feel, because they didn't feel like they were significant. Anyone?
No. You're totally right. I think this was a problem, and the other thing is, it's Fennec who goes and gives them payback at the end. It's not Fett. It's Fennec who goes and does the dirty work, which was cool in itself. But you kind of think, as a statement piece, you kind of want Boba to go in there and absolutely lay waste to that whole little kind of office, as you put it. But you're right. I mean, they come off of this kind of like public star cruiser. They don't really feel like there's a vibe about them. They just kind of walk in. There's no menace, and it's not like they're kind of turning over apple carts, or they're not trying to kind of beat people up. And maybe that's a bit kind of on the nose for a biker gang, but they're just there. And again, we see them obviously kind of plant the Cantona in the Sanctuary Club, and it blows up. But you can't. I think again, you needed to see more of that. You needed more build up, and I think across that whole series, that's probably what the main issue is, that there's just enough build up to kind of like make you like care about this kind of stuff. You want them to really be kind of turning the screw from like the second or the third episode, rather than the penultimate episode.
I guess it boiled down to the fact that it was a 7-episode series, but there was only 5 episodes related to the Fett story, really.
I wonder if perhaps maybe what they should have done, rather than having your 5 and 6 as an interlude, I wonder if they just kind of just have it intercut throughout the whole of the series, pretty much. So you're kind of almost seeing what's going on, a bit like you kind of see in Game of Thrones. You jump from like the south to the north and that, and and it's happening concurrently, so what's going on. So obviously it's all going to kind of come to a head, but then like it doesn't feel like a massive kind of like like Mark said, left turn, and suddenly you're just then you kind of getting bits and pieces and stuff, and it's a build up over those 7 episodes. I mean, I don't know.
That's a good point. Yeah, I think that would have worked.
I think the last shot of the series, excluding the sort of credit scene, was Mando and the child going, "Way, look at," and it's a good acting there. You can see me in Death on the Nile at cinemas.
You think he's joking?
Oh, good plug that. You've been plugging Making Tracks. Here we go.
I've seen Death on the Nile. I didn't see you. What scene?
No, you wouldn't see me unless you were looking for him. It's one of those.
He played the Nile.
But that was kind of the way the series ended. I think most people are taking that. They're looking forward to Mando season 3. We don't know if we're getting Book of Boba Fett season 2. It kind of feels like we should, but I would have expected an announcement straight off the bat, really, or at least some kind of hint towards that. We haven't had that. Do you guys want to see more from Boba Fett, or are you just really looking forward for Mando?
I definitely want to see more Fett. Yeah. It felt a little bit like the thing about Fett is that fans have made so much of the legend of Fett. I really thought that this story would be really tight and defined and specific, and not sort of vague and gappy, because it's left gaps for other storytelling to come in. But as it is, there's Matt there saying no. I get why Matt would say that, but it felt like it needed more definition. And if at the end, and we talked about it on reaction chats, it made me smile at the end when basically after all of that, and he's walking through the village and they're offering him Maileron fruits, and he's with Fennec looking awkward with his helmet off, and says, "Maybe this isn't for us." And you think we've just gone through 7 episodes of this, and then at the end of it, he just goes, "Nah." It just felt like you've rolled a 1 when you needed a 6.
It was like the writer room speaking, wasn't it? That line.
A little bit, and it was like it was almost like a reset button. It's like we've done something different. Let's see how they react to it, and if they don't react to it well, then we can make him the old Fett again. And if people actually like this a lot, we can keep him as the Fett that we've got. And there was just times when Fennec felt more like Boba Fett than Boba Fett, but then there were times when Fett felt like the old Fett, when he started getting a bit scrappy, when he kept his phrases and words really small. Fett doesn't speak much. Tamura said that, I'm saying too much. Totally agree. Fett is concise and compact, and he just says when he needs to say. So when they stuck to that Fett, it worked great.
Yeah, as Andrew said, he spent the season trying to take over Tatooine and then didn't want it. I wouldn't want Tatooine either. It is a bit of the armpit of the galaxy, and everything bad happens there. Nothing good ever comes out of Tatooine.
I think Mandalorian more than sort of fit the bill for what we wanted from Boba Fett. So
That's-
if Boba Fett was like that, then he would have been too similar to the Mandalorian.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the whole 7 episodes, forgetting 5 and 6, but presumably in the background in 5 and 6, it's all about the healing process of Boba Fett from after Return of the Jedi up to where we are now. So it's almost like he couldn't be the Boba Fett we wanted him to be because he was still getting better.
Yep.
So now that he is feeling full strength, and like you say, Mark, at the end of episode 7, this isn't for us, let's go and do what we should be doing. It was almost like a 6.5 hour long introduction to what's going to come next. So hopefully we will get the Fett that we believe we should have had. But even if we don't get him, we've got him with a Mandalorian anyway. So it's all good.
And during the series, Mando went to the planet whose name I can't remember in search of his fellow Mandos. You know the planet that spins round in a kind of circle kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know the one I mean. Nobody can remember the name. Someone in the comments jump in. So he went there, didn't have a ship, so had to spend $6,000 on a 2-night Starcruiser bus to Tatooine. And never before had we seen Starcruisers in Star Wars, and suddenly we were getting them every week. So let's move on from Boba Fett and speak about Galactic Starcruisers.
Seamless link.
What a link that was. You wondered where I was going. The Galactic Starcruiser, the new hotel from Disney in Florida, goes by the name Halcyon as well. None of us have been, so we'll say that off the bat, but we've all seen the photos, we've read the reviews, we've seen the videos. Paul, your initial thoughts on it?
Right. Okay. So when I first saw it announced all those many months, possibly years ago, I sort of thought this probably isn't going to hit the mark. All the build up to it, the little video clips that were shown that were then pulled by Disney because of the reaction from people to it. And then when we eventually were getting sort of drip fed pictures of the captain, who looked like Grand Admiral Thrawn's grandmother. And then we got all sorts of just non-Star Wars feeling vibes. Personally, that's what I was getting from it. And then we got to see what others have witnessed in person. And I have to say, even if that cost $500, I don't think I'd be rushing to go and see it. It just doesn't feel like Star Wars to me. It just doesn't feel like it belongs in that galaxy. If it's not pitched at 6 to 10 year olds, if that's pitched at adults, they're way off the mark. That is purely for children. And that's not who their core audience is. It's people like us. It's people who've grown up loving Star Wars. And all right, it might cost them a little bit more in licensing to use the original trilogy look of the Stormtroopers and of the Empire. But we would much rather see that than see the sequel trilogy, which we're already able to get if we want to go over to Batuu. We can go and see that at the Disney park already. And I know it links into the park, and that's perhaps the point of it. But it'd be nice for the older fan, the older fans to get something out of this that the newer fans seem to be getting sort of like over and over again. I just find the whole thing looks a bit tacky, and it's not for me. Sorry.
Mr. Mulcaster?
Sorry, no. Probably to counter a little bit what Paul says, I do agree. I kind of wonder if part of it is down to the fact that there's an atmosphere that is going to be difficult to capture, on photos and stuff like that. But also, in some respects, yeah, it's Disney, isn't it? It's Disney parks, and so therefore, we do need a Rebel retirement home or a spa. We need a Rebel spa. That's what we need.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
Yeah.
I digress. But I wonder because I saw a couple of tweets, and obviously they're probably well curated about, but there was a couple of photos of kids who were basically right at the end of their stay and were in tears, and it was not in tears not because they've had to pay the bill or because anything like that, but it was basically down to the fact that the experience had ended. So if and I assume because it is Disney and it's a Disney parks, it's going to be more aimed at like families. But yet, they are missing a whole kind of like massive demographic by not really aiming at the fans. And obviously it's difficult because you kind of think, well, to me anyway, and probably to you guys, Star Wars is a lived-in universe, but that place looked absolutely pristine and immaculate. But then again, I suppose on the flip side, if you're going to spend $2,000 or 2,000 galactic credits, you probably don't want like a rust bucket of a ship, really, in universe. You're going to want to go on to a nice kind of like cruiser. But for us, really, I think what we all really want is just to go and stay in the Millennium Falcon in a bunk bed for like 2 nights. And I think there's just that disconnect, isn't it, between what we want and potentially what I think Disney maybe thinks we want. For me,
at that point, I'm just going to jump in. You can go to Tunisia, stay in Luke's house for $11.
There you go. I mean, obviously, dysentery is free, so
Not saying you want to. There's a lot of Al Qaeda and all that kind of people out there, but $11.
Yeah. But there you go, and I mean that's the thing. Obviously, I completely understand the logic of like if they want to kind of create this immersive experience, and you're going to stop off like you are on a cruise at another planet. Well, then obviously because of the timeline that they've selected, it's going to be Batuu. I just wonder if it's completely outside of their scope to maybe rotate it. So like every couple of weeks, they kind of reskin it a little bit, and it's like the OT era. So instead of First Order Stormtroopers, it's original trilogy Stormtroopers, and it's Darth Vader instead of Kylo Ren. I mean, that probably, changing that kind of like thing probably isn't going to be too much of a cost prohibition, and then therefore you're going to possibly appease more people. I don't know. The room for me just kind of looked like an easy hotel room, that you get in like, for like 30 quid a night. The beds look comfy, so somebody's got to tell me those beds aren't comfy. But I don't know. The jury's still out for me whether or not it's worth going or not. What about you, Newbold? What do you think?
I think we should go to Ray's home planet and have a jacuzzi. That would be the thing I would do.
Hey!
I think it's one of those things where you've really got to experience it yourself. So I think unless you actually do it yourself. I know. I know a few people who went on the press thing who've already come out and said they're going to pay the money and go back and do it themselves and pay for themselves.
Shells.
Yeah, but they've already experienced it in like the best possible circumstances, and so they're sold anyway. So they've had an experience that nobody else is going to get, and then they're going to go back and do it again, knowing what they're seeing, sort of thing. If you're coming in it completely fresh and you've only got what other people have seen and said, or what Disney videos have been shown to you, and so on and so forth, then you've got to make your own mind up. I think if I had the cash, and me and Ruth were both up for it, and it was something that we could do, and it wasn't at the cost of something else important, because goodness knows that sort of money, you're halfway towards a half decent car or a couple of very nice holidays or redo the kitchen or whatever. It's a substantial amount of money for most people. Then I probably would want to do it out of curiosity, but as it stands, without seeing any of it other than the clips and videos and photographs I've seen, I've got to be honest, I'm not lying there at night thinking I've got to go. It's one of those things. If life throws me a bone and I get the opportunity to do it, then I'll happily do it. But I'm probably not going to be chasing it, other than unlike something like a Celebration, which I wouldn't want to miss, or a Rancho Obi-Wan I wouldn't want to miss. This, as it stands, I'm not losing any sleep over it.
For me, you can go to the Disney parks, and it's expensive, but it's expensive at a price point that's also achievable. You can stay there at one of the hotels. You can stay at the Grand Floridian or whatever they call it, at the top end in the high bucks, or you can stay at the one that looks like a jukebox.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
so there's a price range and a price point for everyone. This is an experience rather than really a hotel stay. Granted, you're staying there 2 nights, it's part of your holiday, but you're basically telling people they can't afford an experience at Disney World, which is something that Disney have never really done before. Yes, you have to be selective if you're going on a family trip because everything comes at a price and everything's a little add-on and an extra. But you're basically excluding people, you know, they're not really giving them the opportunity to experience it. And that's my biggest gripe from it. If you lay apart the price, because most of the people that have been there, although you're now getting real reviews from people who have paid to go there coming out in the past week, lay the price to one side, it felt slightly naff to me. I didn't think the quality looked good enough. You know, I was looking online at other experiences. You know, there's a DC have got like a Batman theme bar in London, which is like next level luxury, looks gorgeous, amazing. This didn't have that kind of feel to it. Everything seemed relatively basic hotel standard. The experiences, the games looked kind of 1980s PC games. It didn't look luxury. The guys were sticking metal objects in holes, and this was a game, and it was supposed to be immersive. And you know, there's something wrong with it. You know, the captain looks like a giant Oompa Loompa. It just didn't. It just didn't feel right. Didn't feel immersive. And I compared it to Secret Cinema, which I know I did. Mark, you did as well.
Yeah,
we paid 75 quid for the night, which seemed expensive at the time. Completely immersive experience, incredible level of production. The level of production at that 75 quid per person was better than the immersive experience I felt looking at from a distance of the Galactic Starcruiser. So to me, it didn't deliver in that point. And it's a hard thing to deliver because one, you're trying to deliver a hotel experience and so an entertainment experience at the same time. Little elements of it seemed weird, and the fact you can go outside and get fresh air was a feature of the hotel. It's just like, okay, not paying $6,000 for that. And if you're a parent, you're taking your family there, you really can't escape your kids for that 2 days. It's not like you can put them to the pool or the creche or whatever. So it is, you're really buying into spending 2 hard days with the family, which from most holidays you need a little bit of a break, don't you? One thing,
it was all about the merch as well, wasn't it? It was more about exclusive merch. You can get this, and then even after you've left it,
and that was kind of the bits that I really liked was the people that went really in depth in the reviews and they did the merch. Some of the merch looked really great quality stuff. But they did like little tours of the ship, and you find little things like a picture of George Lucas in a cargo hold and all these kind of things, little images like that. So there's a lot of thought and depth going into elements of it. So hats off to them for that. I thought the food looked great, great menu, great ideas. Gary Rhodes was the chef that was with Pob, by the way, from those of us who were watching at the start of the show. I remember. Was
he the chef at Galactic Starcruiser?
He could well be. Well, I think he died, didn't
he? He
did. Oh, poor Gary Rhodes. That was a great program. Anyway, so that looked good. I kind of laughed a little bit at the entertainment, but what do you do in terms of a singer for Star Wars? But it did look kind of fun and quirky and odd. Sabak looked okay as well. It seems to have been something of a bit of an obsession in the Disney era of Star Wars as Sabak, but I wasn't blown away with the sort of grand finale and Chewbacca and Rey and Kylo. It was kind of, again, it kind of had the little bit of naff feeling to it, and that she came out with her new huge hilt lightsaber that lights up and then put it on the floor and picked up another one to fight with, and then stood in a conveyor belt, and it wasn't like next level immersive experience for me, because guarantee you cannot go up to that level in the hotel. So there's just little things. I just compared it to the fact that it went to Secret Cinema. Everyone's walking round about you, the story's going on round about you, the X-Wing fighter comes in over your head. The whole thing was phenomenally done, and it just didn't seem to have that level. And when you compare the price point of $3,000 for the evening to 75 quid, it didn't work for me.
I'd rather pay decent money and go around some of the filming locations around the world. That would mean more to me than going to that.
Yeah.
I'd go to Iceland. I'd go to the black sandy beaches that appeared in Rogue One. I'd go.
The Ringwald's Clavis, by the way.
Yeah.
Well done,
You know,
Andy.
but to me, that would mean far more of a connection to Star Wars than anything that they've shown on that cruiser.
Matt's saying there, do not take your parents with you to the Batman bar.
That's words of experience, isn't it?
Andrew's saying there he's kind of ignored everything to do with the Halcyon since he heard the price. And again, he kind of echoed what other people said. I'd rather do Rancho Obi-Wan. And I think this is a problem that Disney's going to get, is that the price just immediately offends and puts people off, I think. There's going to be people who can afford that, and it's not a big deal for them. And the other sides of us who would have to save and scrimp and find the money to do it are going to be thinking, yeah, I'd like to do it, but there's probably 100 other things I'd like to do before then. So
if it looked totally amazing, then the price wouldn't be the only thing that would put you off. But the fact that it doesn't look totally amazing, and the fact that it does cost as much as it does, it's a definite no. It's an easy no for me.
I maintain the fact that what they've done at Galaxy's Edge looks a far lot better to me. I wish there was more rides and more experiences as part of the park and expanded the park side of things than visit the hotel. But the park seems, a better experience.
Yeah.
Even though
there's
that's
just an
more
element
about
of this. There's just an element of it, like you say, because it's a cost thing. It almost generally in general conversation, people don't tend to talk about what they earn. It's just not the done thing. And people who brag and boast about how much money they've got, generally, most people think they're arseholes. So and just by nature of it's become a divisive thing. Do you know what I mean? It's just become a thing. It's about the money now. It's not just about the experience. And Star Wars. Of course, Star Wars isn't for everyone. Not everyone can afford all the sideshow toys. Not everyone can afford every Hasbro toy. There's always been levels of Star Wars to varying degrees, and a lot of it's based on age. Because if you're a bit older like us, you've probably a good chunk down your mortgage, or your kids have moved out, or whatever it might be. So everyone's in different places. But this just feels different. It's an experience that all Star Wars fans should really be able to have a look at, or at least sample a portion of. But it's a tiny, tiny percentage of Star Wars fans that will ever get to do this, and I think that's what's putting a lot of people off. But like I say, if I had the money and I could do it, I'd like to do it to make my own mind up, because my opinions are very much based on the temperature of the room and what other people have seen, and just the little bits I can discern from the stuff I've seen myself. So we'll have to see how things go.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. I mean, I kind of wonder if maybe what they could have potentially have done is, played both sides of a coin. So, okay, you do a high-end kind of fully immersive experience. It's going to cost, but obviously know your audience. And if that's actually going to be more kind of like people who've got more disposable income because they're older, set it aside and focus it on an OT, but then take that kind of sequel era kind of show and stuff like that and put it into one of the main hotels. So, rebrand a hotel that they've already got and make it more, family friendly. So you've got the two options. So you can either kind of go in hardcore as a Star Wars, experience and or go in with a family meet and greet, Rey, they do a little kind of lightsaber battle and stuff like that, and it's it's not necessarily quite as a big spend. I mean, you kind of like tick all the boxes, because I mean, like you said, at the end of the day, to me anyway, it's always felt like Disney has been fairly democratic. There's always a Disney for everyone. I mean, for example, I guess like the Disney cruises, they're fairly pricey, but they're not. You get more for your buck than actually what you do for Halcyon.
Yep.
But I mean, even that is still something that is gonna cost, and it's only going to appeal to a lot of people. But if I get 5 numbers in the lottery or 6 numbers in the lottery, I'll take all 4 of you, especially you, Paul. We'll give you the 20 grand room. Because I haven't heard, because they just, I mean, I saw an article that kind of said, there's a room on there which is like $20,000 or something a night. But I've not heard anybody who stayed in there or what you get with it. So it's just like a mystery room. So it'd be fantastic to see more.
My advice to anyone is get your money, go to Galaxy's Edge, enjoy the experience of that. For a meal at night, go to the pirate restaurant just outside Disney because it's so naff, it's brilliant. And if you encountered anyone that came in on the Galactic Starcruiser experience, you've driven up in your speeder to Disney, parked in the car park, gone to Galaxy's Edge, you see them coming in on their Galactic Starcruiser, just shout out, bus wankers, and carry on with your own experience and have fun at the park. And on that note, we move out off the park and on to the last topic. We've only got 5 minutes left. We're going to discuss Obi-Wan Kenobi coming up in Disney Plus, £7.99, better price point Disney. We'll all appreciate that and we'll all enjoy that. Mr. Newbold, what are you looking forward to, or what do you want to see in the Obi-Wan series?
I'm hugely looking forward to this, and I know Becca's with us tonight in the chat, and Claire. There's loads of potential characters that could come into Obi-Wan Kenobi, friends, and obviously we want to see Ewan back in that role. That's going to be amazing. We've got Hayden back in as Anakin. That's going to be awesome. So I think just seeing the guys in those roles is just going to be so exciting. I'm not averse to it being set off Tatooine. That's not a deal breaker for me. I'm just curious how deep they go into the interactions that Obi-Wan has with other people, because our headcanon, and our headcanon's our worst enemy, of course, is that not that many people even know Obi-Wan's alive. So to me, he needs to be like the Obi-Wan that was sneaking around the Death Star, and the only person that saw him was Vader. If that's the Obi-Wan we get, and there's just tiny interactions with people, that's fine. If it's known that he's around and they just can't find him, then it's not Han Solo looking for the Falcon in the Western Reaches. This is the Empire, so it's searching for a Jedi who should be kind of on their radar. So just if they play it down, it'll work great. I'm very much looking forward to it.
Mr. Naylor, your 30 seconds on Kenobi.
Right, I want to see flashbacks. I think the 2 leads, Hayden and Ewan, they're both still. They still look like they did back in the day, and with a bit of de-aging if they need to, a bit of Vaseline on the lens, whatever they need to do to make them look a bit younger, we could get flashbacks to what we've seen in the Clone Wars cartoons. That's a must. I want to see, therefore, Ahsoka. I want to see Tem as various clones. It's got so many possibilities, and I just hope they just don't get it wrong. In terms of the actual Darth Vader and Obi-Wan stuff, I've got a feeling that Uncle Owen is going to play a bigger part than we perhaps already understand of that character, and then that will change our opinion on how we view him when we come back to watching episode 4 again. That would be an interesting sort of thing to do. There's so many possibilities, and this more than anything else, I'm really looking forward to. Please just don't get it wrong, Disney. Please.
And Mark, your 30 seconds, because Paul doesn't know what 30 seconds is.
I want to see the ultimate Owen, Beru, and Kenobi love triangle.
There you go. My quick take on that note is I want to see Darth Maul. We want Darth Maul in the desert. Come on.
Okay.
Right. And on that note, that's the end of this week's Good Morning Tatooine, the Jabba Court Special Edition. Next week we'll be back. A normal show. We'll be counting all the news from the past week. Thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks for all the comments. And look forward to the other roundtable back at the end of the month. See you all soon.
Keep up to date with the latest Star Wars news each and every day on FanthaTracks.com. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Tumblr, and Pinterest at FanthaTracks. And be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and follow FanthaTracks TV to be alerted to new content and be a part of our live shows.